Welcome to the Gravel Lot, the place where bikes are for everyone.
The Gravel Lot podcast is presented by Be Free Ride Bikes Apparel, providing a fully customized cycling apparel experience to provide you and your team the attention to detail and personal touch that you deserve.
And also brought to you by Grimpour Brothers Coffee, offering handmade coffee roasted weekly in small batches to give you the finest quality coffee to start your day. Choose their subscription service and earn your free bag of coffee today.
Also by BioWheels Fit Studio and Workshop in Cincinnati, Ohio, offering you a full host of bike fitting services intended to provide the cycling enthusiast with the most efficient, comfortable, and sustainable bike fit they have ever had.
And by the Ritual All Natural Skincare, providing small batch, handmade chamois cream, custom blended for your team or shop right here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Contact us today to learn more.
And by Hand Up Gloves, great gear, better times. Providing a wide range of apparel for bikes, snow sports, and golf in multiple designs and fits to let your personality shine.
Our goal with the Gravel Lot is to inspire cyclists of all stripes to ride bikes, share their story, and have fun. We love all bikes and anyone who wants to ride them. So no matter where you sit on the spectrum of bikes, we'll always have a place for you in the Gravel Lot.
And now, the hosts of TGL, John Woolry and Doug McClintock.
Hello again, and welcome back to the Gravel Lot, the place for all things bike. And no matter what ride you are on, you will always have a home here in the Gravel Lot. I'm John. That guy over there is Doug, and we are so glad that you guys found us again. So whether you're new or an existing Pebble, welcome. Hi.
Yes, welcome.
How are you doing? No matter where you're at in the country right now, we have really cold temperatures here, but we're getting ready to bring somebody on who has really, really, really cold temperatures.
True.
So no matter what you're dealing with, hopefully you're staying safe on top of everything else, staying safe. So welcome. We're glad that you found us. And if you like what you hear, press the subscribe button. Comment down below, follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and if you want to, you can become one of our most loyal Pebbles because we are all Pebbles in the Gravel Lot. You can find us over on Patreon, and you can donate to making this thing happen every week.
Yeah, and if you don't know what Patreon is, or you're new to it, it is a platform that allows people to support creators who are making things, and obviously, we're making something.
We're making a thing.
Yeah, we're making a thing. As John said, hey, are we doing a live podcast today? Yes, we're doing a live podcast today. We're making a thing. And Patreon allows you to help support the creators who are doing things that you enjoy. What do you get if you support us on Patreon? Well, first off, you get access to live and personal AMA videos, first dibs on all our upcoming guests. We announce our roster there of who's coming on ahead of time, so it gives you time to prep your questions. Sneak peeks on new projects that we're starting to work on, and probably a whole bunch more stuff that we are going to add at some point in time. So make sure that you get those questions for AMA after you become a Patreon supporter and get them to us via email or content submission or social platforms or whatever, or on our new toll-having telephone line. I want to say toll free, but that's not a thing anymore, right? Call us toll free.
Do tolls even exist anymore?
I don't even know.
Like long distance, is that a thing?
I don't think it is. I don't think so anymore. But anyway, call us 513-400-5577. 513-400-5577. Leave us a message on our voicemail. Text us there. Tell us what's going on. Ask us questions. We will address those on our Patreon. So if you want to see the answers to those, go subscribe and support us there.
Yeah, and tell us if tolls are actually still a thing.
Yeah, please.
And
do.
are 888 numbers still a thing?
Yeah, they still exist.
Yeah, that was like all of the late 90s, I feel like.
What about 1-900 numbers?
They have to still exist. They're
I'm
probably
sure.
worth way too much money.
Probably.
Anyway, for all the kids who did not grow up with a corded phone, did not grow up. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's out of the way. So let's get this started. Doug, how was your ride this week?
It's good. I have successfully, knock wood, avoided hurting myself while shoveling snow for almost a week and a half now. So I'm taking that as an absolute win. I'm tired of shoveling snow. I like snow a lot, but we're just not cut out for it here in Cincinnati. And
Record-breaking snow, the most snowfall in the last 14 years in the greater Cincinnati area in the last week.
And we don't have it that bad, but
Yes.
in general, right? A lot of people are dealing with a lot worse, including our good friend Dan down in Austin. Dan, we're thinking of you, thinking of the whole family,
Yes.
making sure you're all staying warm and thinking about all of you. But I've been digging out the bike share stations, and it seems like a never-ending task. We finished like on Friday or Saturday. We were like, they're all done, and then it's like, here comes more precipitation,
More snow.
So, I feel like I'm kind of Groundhog Daying it in that fashion, which has not been great, but I've remained safe and stealthy and limber, doing my exercises, and that's good. But the most important part is I'm very happy because today I came home. I got to show you what was on my porch.
Uh-oh. Show and tell.
Coffee.
Oh,
yeah. So much
that
coffee.
is so much coffee.
Yeah. So Greenport Brothers, like it's always the good smelling package. So I'm just really excited because we were hoping it would come, but with all the USPS delays, we didn't get it for the weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna be screaming around the house tomorrow. So that's what I am excited about, and that's my ride's been pretty good, based on all of those things. But it's even better because now I got more Greenport Brothers. So
Yeah. I like that. It's always good. And I'm because Dan is one of the folks who is without power, I am wearing my Grimport Gravel USA hoodie today as Doug said, in honor, Korean Dad love, to our good friend Dan and everybody that's trying to figure out whether it's how to stay warm, how to shovel out, how to get your power back on, or dealing with so many other things. So
how's your ride been, John?
It's good because last week I got a lot off my chest at the beginning of the show, and it was very cathartic, and I think even more cathartic because I had so many people, whether it was message the show, comment on our actual podcast post, or message me personally, whether it was support or offering some sort of perspective on yeah, or even just even like some people, like there were some people that disagreed with my very, very rigid stance on things. And there's only so much you can do in a rant in terms of making yourself clear on your stance. But I think that just having that conversation, and most of my rant was me trying to figure it out for myself and figure out like, how do I square this? And people reaching out made me feel connected and made me feel a lot better about where things were. And tomorrow, I don't want to call it the short straw, but I drew the straw between my wife and I of taking George, her father-in-law, to get his second shot. So he gets his second vaccine shot tomorrow. Thankfully, it is a couple days clear of all of the snow that we had, so all the clinics that were closed are now back open and they are back on schedule. So it's
not that
good.
Not that I want to pry, but is he a Moderna girl?
If he's not a Moderna girl, is he a Pfizer boy? Like, is that how that works?
No. I just like Moderna girl. It sounds like a brand of something.
You're like flipping your non-existent hair.
Yeah, flip my hair. It just seems like a brand of something, and I like
his is the Pfizer.
Okay, because Ellie got her second shot and was not feeling good for like a day and a half. Very, very like not feeling good, which happens with the Moderna. We see, but older folks not as much. So that's good.
Yeah, well, I think both Amanda and I are kind of like tightening down the belts, as it were, for whatever may come. He's he's had a lot to deal with in the last year, but even before that, he's I don't want to call him a hypochondriac, but he's prone to overreacting. Um, so we kind of gave him the download on what to expect.
You'll be all
Um,
right. We're going to get through this. You're not going to
because we were weighing the pros and cons of telling him that he's going to feel potentially bad. Because you tell him that he's going to feel bad and then he's going to take that and magnify it. But if you don't tell him, then he's going to be convinced that his cancer's returned and he's like dying. So
it's a tough balance.
It was a toss up. So we told him about what to expect. So hopefully he had a little bit of like, I feel meh for the first one. So hopefully if there is an escalation for the second shot, it's not too bad. And he has just a day. 'Cause the way I look at it is this: I've almost been locked in my house now for a year, and he's been locked in his house for a little bit longer than a year because we kind of put him on house arrest at the beginning of March last year. Feeling bad for a day seems like an easy sacrifice to make at this point.
Yep, for sure.
When you got a 365 day pile up, and then you have one day of feeling crappy where you just lay on the couch and you watch soaps or The View or whatever. I don't know, whatever's on TV anymore.
Daytime television.
Yeah. You fall asleep. That's what happens. Yeah.
It's
so
perfect.
Anyway, good. This was a good week.
Awesome. That is good to hear. So let's keep moving forward. Make sure you get any questions today in the AMA in whatever platform you are. Pepper us with your questions, Facebook, Twitch, whatever. Get us your questions.
Got a good one today.
We got a awesome guest today. So I'm bring our guest this weekend. And this week's guest may not necessarily be a household name to all of you, but I'm going to bet that you've seen one of the brands that he's been a part of building or leading and being engaged with. He is the founder of Omaha Devo. They have a boatload of winners jerseys from different things. He's built a top 15 Trek retail shop. He is a board member for the Bicycle Union Mentoring Program and Outdoor Alliance, but probably most relevant to all of you Pebbles, and certainly to myself and John, this guy is the current CEO of the International Mountain Bike Association, or better known as IMBA. So he's kind of a big deal. So Kent McNeill, welcome to the Gravel Lot.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We are fired up that you are with us. This is my wheelhouse. I got so many questions. I got so much stuff.
I feel like today my job is pulling Doug's leash and like keeping him from moving too fast and going too far down the rabbit hole. But before we get started, huge thanks to Chris Creed for making this connection. You can go find his episode at the end of last season, but he has already put us in contact with so many people for season 4. This is just the first of I think fairly a good amount of high-powered people. So I am the non-IMBA person in the room right now, so for all of you who are not familiar with IMBA or are not familiar with the intricacies of it, I got your back. I'm going to try and make sense of what these two are talking about for you and keep you informed, or at least like on the tracks.
All right. Thanks, John.
That is my like kind of promise that I can't really promise.
Well, that is good. I appreciate it, John. Thank you for keeping me honest and keeping both of us not out of science speak. So, so the most important piece that we like to start with, because we're just getting to know Kent, right? Kent's just joined us here in the Gravel Lot. Well, hey, Kent, welcome here. It's good to see you on a bike. How did you get into bikes? Where did this start for you? Where did your love of bikes come from?
It's a great question, and in a somewhat humorous story. So I didn't discover bikes again, and I say again because I think we all discovered them as a kid, and then I got a driver's license. And so when that came back around for me, it was in college, which would have been the early 90s, and this thing called mountain biking was really becoming popular. My roommate and I heard about it, and we decided that was something that we might want to look into trying. And so he came home from work. He was really excited. His boss had 2 bikes that we could borrow, and we were going to go out to Platte River State Park, which was a park outside of in between Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraska. And we were going to ride these bikes. And he said the best thing about them is it's his boss and his boss's wife's bikes, and they're hybrids. They can do it all. they can ride on the road, they can ride in the dirt. This is going to be great. And so we took these hybrids and went out to what is a fairly steep river bluff park. And we took off down the dirt trails, and there was another mountain biker that was just coming out of the trails, that was on an actual mountain bike. And he looked at us and he's like, "You guys going into those trails?" And like, "Yeah," and we're excited. And he's like, "Well, good luck." And we took off down the trails, and testing the limits of center pull brakes and 35C tires, but we just had a blast. And despite wrecking a lot and pushing the bikes a lot, we had fun. And from there, we decided we needed to get some bikes of our own, and things just took off from there. Really fell in love with the sport, just being outdoors and realizing the opportunities that were there for that. So
this is was it JB, Doug, the other one that his first ride on a mountain bike was on narrow tires?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Just
yeah,
a couple. They like all these things are blending blending in together now. But I'm so happy anytime that there's another person that joins the show that has a similar experience to their first time off road to me. Mine was on a cross bike, 32C, cantilever brakes, and I've already told the story, plenty of blood, just like I'm sure that you guys had. But
yeah.
it was one of those things that like, oh, I've always liked walking in the woods and going on hikes and just exploring what the dirt has to offer. But now I can do it on a bike, and there's also bikes that are made to do this. I need to do this more. So for you, was being in the woods always something that you enjoyed doing, or did that kind of coalesce all at the same time for you?
No, just being outside in general. I grew up out in North Platte, Nebraska, and just grew up hunting and fishing, and lived with North Platte centered between both the North and South Platte arms of the river at that point. And so grew up on the river, grew up outside. And so always being in outdoor recreation of some sort is how I grew up. And then you mix in the fact that you could do it, on a bike and see a lot more ground. Growing up riding horses, it was kind of maybe the next move into college and going, okay, this could be a lot of fun. So just an extension of it, really.
I think for a lot of people, if you're active outside, it's real easy to make a transition into, this other thing is also outside. I saw someone doing it. Maybe I can do that. Maybe this is a tangential activity, right? Like if I load up my 4Runner with a bunch of stuff, I'm bringing bikes, I'm bringing hiking equipment, I'm bringing like whatever I can to think like a stand-up paddleboard. I want to do all the things outside. I think there's a lot of congruous spaces where it's easy to move if you already understand being outdoors and having that space. How did it go to the next level for you in college from just being like, okay, now we have our bikes. Now me and my roommate got bikes. How did this progress to the next level and see you getting involved in like actually advocacy and racing?
Yeah, it's a great question. Ironically, it escalated quickly because I didn't discover it until like my sophomore year in college. But at that time, I didn't really realize that I was maybe more internally wired to be a builder of things. And so got into it, started racing, actually found out that I had spent the previous years of my life trying to play ball sports that I didn't have much talent in, and just had a natural talent in mountain biking. So
I don't have that. I have the no talent in the ball sports. I don't have the talent in mountain biking, but I'm with you on the first part.
Yeah. So I started, success a lot of times breeds passion. And so I started racing and getting competitive and having, some success there. And then decided, this is so much fun. We need more races. So I'll get into race promotion. And then started helping putting on the state series. And then we had met a gal that was starting our university cycling club. And so got joined up in that. And then we, got that going in the collegiate scene. off the ground. And it was all like, how many other things can I spin up? And it's kind of funny listening to your past broadcast with Chris Creed, but it was a lot of that way. It's like, okay, we got to get these different things spun up around everything that we want to do. And so I'm just going to start spinning plates. And so that led into, we needed, like a bunch of mountain bikers, we figured we could get more access when we showed up and talked to the land manager and started helping with trail maintenance. So we started a trail maintenance club within our collegiate team at the time. And ultimately that grew into what is the IMBA local group here in Nebraska today. But it was just the love of the sport. Like I just fell in love with it, fell in love with the people, fell in love with the community around it. And so any chance I could get to bring more of that into the community, I just look for avenues and ways to spur that and make it happen.
This is a lot. I'm thinking back to my college, and I felt like there were points. I think my like third and fourth years, I think I kind of got it figured out to where like things were under control a little bit. But my first and second years, I felt like things were moving really fast. So the idea of piling advocacy, race promotion, all these other things, I guess two-part question. First off, what did you go to school for? And the part two of that is, did a lot of these other things that you were doing line up with skill sets that you already kind of were good at, so they didn't necessarily put a huge extra drag on your time schedule?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hadn't thought about it. So schooling undergrad was focused on the health sciences and exercise science. At the time, the physical therapy field was really hot, and that's where I thought I was going to end up. And so the exercise science, exercise physiology point kind of overlaid helping me train and get into the sport from a competitive standpoint. So that aligned. But ultimately, I think the rest of it, the advocacy side, and it was looking back, it was just the avenue by which we could have more of the experience. I don't think I ever really thought, hey, I want to get into advocacy. It just, it was as IMBA was, at that time, at that stage, talking about, the way you get access is by sweat equity, and you get out and you work on the trails and you help build them and help maintain them. And we're like, well, if that means more fun, we're all in. We didn't really think of it too much strategically at that time.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Like, did somebody at that point in time be like, here's the roadmap to getting access? Like, what were the resources available at that time to start getting into that advocacy space?
IMBA was there, and it was those resources in those early days that helped. I always joke that helped our group of dirtbags figure out how to get access into state parks and build things that they weren't familiar with, and just learning from, at the time, I think IMBA had state reps back then, and we were learning from them and realizing how to have those conversations. And we got excited when we looked at the terrain about, what kind of, look at all the more trails we could build here and what we could, create in our backyards and in different parks around our community if we can figure out how to have these conversations. And so for us, it was IMBA that really provided that model and answered questions and gave us that guidance on how we could partner with our land managers and build more trails.
I think a lot of people now come at IMBA, and I would love to see some of the data from some of the surveys that you guys take in terms of how are we doing type surveys. But I think now the spectrum of first impressions of IMBA are probably a lot more varied than they were at the time, but it's also a very different world than what you're talking about here. So can you kind of talk us through your first impressions when you discovered that there was a kind of agency of people that were there to kind of hold your hand through this? Because I completely get the entrepreneurial spirit in terms of like, oh, there's nothing here, so if I want to build it, if I want to do it, I guess I just build it myself because I'm bullheaded and I feel like I can do it, and no one's going to stop me. But then you discover that there's actually people there that can kind of help you go through that process. So I guess what was your discovery of them, and then first impressions as you were kind of establishing that relationship?
Yeah, I think initially we were really, really excited because, I mean, look, we were a bunch of college kids and we weren't exactly prepared to go have conversations with land managers. Let's be honest. And
We're hungover. We
yeah,
apologize for that.
Right.
exactly, exactly. And then really, for us, it was IMBA gave us that validity with the land manager because we could, we said, hey, we're working with them. These are the recommendations. And this is how we're learning to build trails sustainably. The trail care crews were out on the landscape at that time, and those resources for us were, we were just excited because like, oh, you can make us look legitimate because we're not going to look that way otherwise. And you helped us with the talking points. You helped us understand, how to build trails sustainably and maintain it, and know how to have the conversation. So we were very much excited to have that type of expertise to lean on, and then to validate and really get us a seat at the table. I don't know that we would have gotten it otherwise, or it would have been a lot harder to get.
Yeah, I think it's important, regardless of what stage anything's in, right? Like, we talked to our good friend Mickey Vukovic, who's now the CEO. What is he? The executive director? I don't know. He's got some important title at USA Skateboarding now, but he used to run the Tony Hawk Foundation, which is now the skate park project. And it's building that blueprint, right? There at that period of time, we're talking the early aughts now, right? Like, IMBA was doing the yeoman's amount of work about giving people opportunity to learn this kind of skill and build that. And I think places that can build that blueprint really help people understand and feel legitimate in that space. So did you guys just say, cool, we're going to be a thing? Or did you decide that you were going to like formally build a chapter? How did that happen? Because I think a lot of people are like, oh God, I have these people, we want to get together and we want to make something happen at this park, but there's no one around us to guide us. We can tap into a national organization. But did you guys like at college be like, oh, we should establish a 501c3 and then get our nonprofits? Like, was that even part of the landscape at that point in time for y'all?
Not even close. No, my idea of getting funding in college was using student loans to buy mountain bikes. So I was not
Nice.
anywhere near understanding this, this type of work.
Do I get a free hat when I sign up for this credit card to buy my next mountain bike? That's fine. I could use
That's fine. Yeah, absolutely. No, actually, the Trails Have Our Respect, which is the IMBA local group here now, we didn't get to the point of bringing that into a 501c3 until I was already started my retail businesses. And so Thor, which is the acronym, for a long time, continued on as a volunteer stewardship board that just took care of the trails that were out there and had decent relationships with the land managers, and really didn't have much membership, if you will. It was the hardcore mountain bikers that were doing all the work and building what they wanted and maintaining it. And so when I got into the retail side of the sport and started the business, I realized there was an opportunity at that point to help the organization grow its capacity into its next phase of effectiveness. And so we did a fundraiser as a retailer. Gary Fisher came in and rode with us, and we raised the money to make it a 501c3 and kind of formalize it and move it forward. And then it was even a few more years after that that it became that moved into a chapter program. So
what was the time frame between college kids talking with state reps and becoming a 501c3?
That was probably six or 7 years, because those early conversations happened when I was a sophomore in college, and then it was right after college is when I got into the retail and opened my first shop. So, and it was probably the second year of that when we did the fundraiser to turn it into a 501c3.
So here's something that I know Doug has dealt with it locally. I've watched friends become trail stewards, transition through it, feel overwhelmed, and kind of, I don't want to say peter out, but burn out and move on to go, I want to just go ride my bike. I don't want to deal with all you hooligans. So for 6 years, the way you describe it, it sounds like there's a very, very minute group of people that are kind of fostering all of the trails that however many it is, even if it's just a mile of trail. I don't think people realize how much work is involved with maintaining a mile of trail through,
Yeah.
No, they don't.
whether it's Midwest winters or even Nebraska winters and summers. The dirt does a
Yeah.
lot of things. So for 6 years, what do you think the keys to success for this specific set of people to keep that moving forward? And are there things that folks from across the country can kind of take to the bank in terms of these are the things that you need to look for in, one, recruiting new people, but two, retaining those people so you don't burn them out?
Yeah, no, there's a lot to be said there. But just to try to keep it somewhat concise, I think we ran through the same issues, right? We had just a small number of people doing all the work, and to a degree getting burnt out because they were the ones on the trail every day working, and others were riding it and giving them thumbs up when they came by, and so I think every organization struggles with that to a degree. And IMBA really did help us where we came into this idea of growing it and becoming more organized. Was IMBA came in and did a seminar with us and really helped us look at where we were at and where we wanted to go, and then helped us see the roadmap that we were going to always have this small group of people getting burnt out on trail maintenance if we didn't think about how to essentially make trail work a broader community kind of ethos and investment into that system. And then really helped us realize that, some people are cut out for trail work. Other people may not be, but they can help out with funding things. And there's a lot of different ways people can contribute back to the ecosystem and to their local trails. And so with that, for us, we knew we needed to grow capacity and we needed to learn how to do that through membership and having good marketing materials and knowing how to win the touch points, whether it's the retailers or different ways to find those members that would really value the sweat equity that goes into building and maintaining trail systems. And so, I think there's a lot. One of the advice was, well, are your trail days fun, or do you put the FU in fun? And we kind of went back and looked at it and was like, yeah, we don't have enough beer and bacon. So, how do we make trail days something that can be done in smaller bites, but also build community at the same time? And it's not just, out there working and making it a miserable experience. Yeah.
Nobody likes to just carry the heavy rocks. That's kind of a pain, but it has to be done. But can you make it fun or a competition or something? Do you think that your move into retail and, establishing your own shop gave you a broader sense of the missed opportunities that you guys weren't taking advantage of at that time?
Yeah, and I think that's where I started to drive it that direction, because I felt like as I got to understand retail better, and I still feel that the retail's biggest value to these organizations is connecting them with potential members and supporters of their work. But because we didn't know how to reach those folks, and yet here we are selling mountain bikes every day to new riders or even existing riders that had never heard of the work we were doing. That's where it really, it really dawned on me, like, we got to leverage this business for good, and this is how we can do it. And it's not by bike shops writing big checks as much as it is connecting the community of members to those organizations, in my mind.
Yeah, John and I always talk about this, and this is always a bone of contention, but like, I'll say this right now for all the Pebbles who are involved in advocacy at your own local level, and I guarantee Kent's going to applaud me when I say this because he was a former retail owner. Do not ask bike shops to fund your trails. Stop. Just stop. There are plenty of people with plenty of money who will fund your trails. You don't need to take money out of the bike world to fund your trails.
Yeah. I could several explanation points behind that. There's so much opportunity with funding for trails, and that's one of the things IMBA is really working on mapping out for organizations right now. But much deeper pockets and ability to fund more substantial trails. But the retailers, in my mind, the real value is connecting their customers into your community, and how you do that together in partnership, and celebrate that work and what stewardship and advocacy can look like for their customers, that's the real value.
So let me ask both of you this, as CEO of IMBA and outgoing most recent chapter president of our local chapter. If both of you are very, very keen on bike industry not funding trails, why is it something that is consistently seen as the only venue? Whether it's externally or within bike shops, because there are bike shops everywhere that feel like they should be the ones contributing, or that they should have some sort of local investment in the trails for
all right,
whatever reason.
My quick stab on it is, it's fine if bike shops want to contribute. That's fine, but they shouldn't be your only avenue for funding. You should go to them and say, hey, who do you have who rides mountain bikes, who you think I could talk to about a place they work at, or all these other things. I hear what Kent's saying on this space. I think the challenge is that cycling is so endemic. We only think of people that care about bikes or trails as the people that we know that use them. So that's who we turn to. We got to broaden our scope. Kent?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I would also agree, it's not an either or, it can be an and, but understanding the retailer's biggest value likely isn't the check they're going to write to build trails, and realizing that connection into other networks is there. But to answer your question more directly, I think it's because we go, well, they directly benefit, so they should write the check because they're going to sell more bikes. And so that's just I think that's what got us to going to those retailers to begin with, was like, oh, you'll fund it, you'll sell more bikes. And I think, we did, invest in some projects, but when you look at the larger projects and the pools of money that are out there, retailers are generally the smallest pool. So I think if you limit yourself to that, you really limit the capacity of what you can build in a community.
So, okay. So this is a great kind of through line to your life, your digging trail, as you said, just a bunch of dirtbag kids. Then you get into the real retail world and you see kind of the industry from a different perspective. Do you think that has, I mean, obviously this is probably a no-brainer, but I think there's deeper conversations that happen around it. Going from retail back into the advocacy space and being VP of IMBA and then now being CEO of IMBA. Is that one of your pushes as you come into leadership and executive roles, of trying to kind of go through re-education of bike shop owners to get them to feel comfortable, for the ones that do feel like they should have some sort of ownership over local trails and feel like they need to benefit as much as possible from local trails, and feel like they need to have that control, and kind of help re-educate people that are struggling with that, to get, like, for us, there's so many big businesses in Cincinnati area. You have Procter & Gamble, you have Kroger, you have United Dairy Farmers. There's so many people, and there's buildings all over the entire tri-state area that are named after people that have foundations that want to do this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But as a group, we as cyclists have always looked at our thing as something that's ours. And
let's ask Shimano for money.
That we need to ask, Shimano or Trek or Specialized or insert brand name here, because we want to keep it ours. We want to keep it pure. We can't have UDF on our trail system. So is there some kind of, I hate using that word, but is there some kind of re-education and marketing kind of kit that needs to come with that, of helping those folks understand kind of how all of these things coalesce?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I think that if we can take a step back and realize that the industry and bike shops and others can be conveners, right, and bring a lot of other community partners around the table, there's a much grander vision that can be realized. We've got at IMBA, we've got one of the things that we do is we do a vision setting with community stakeholders at Trail Labs down in Bentonville, Arkansas. And, a lot of folks, have heard a lot about Northwest Arkansas and what's been developed and is still being developed there. It's amazing. It's an amazing place, and it's amazing where they've been and come from over the last 10 plus years. That didn't happen by asking bike shops to write checks. Now,
No.
some folks will argue, well, that they have a unique funding situation there with Tom and Stuart Walton, and they do. They have a fantastic funding situation there for that, and it's amazing. The reality is there's philanthropic dollars in every community that can be tapped into. And there's the ability to build a much grander vision into what is IMBA's focus now around more trails close to home, by realizing that the bike community, the core endemic industry, can play a really good role at both convening and getting stakeholders around the table and helping them see the value of that, and then ultimately stewarding it, taking care of it, and building the community around it in the end, right? And so if we're going to be able to have a lot more trails close to home and diversity in those trails, and be able to have the kinds of things that we don't always have to travel to get to for the experiences we want. Again, it has to happen by taking a broader look in partnerships and what those both the stakeholders and funders and land managers, and there's a lot of folks that can be around the table to help drive that in a much different direction than what we were able to do even as college kids, or, we call the old rake and ride and trim it and call it good. That's not the landscape today. It's not the experiences that riders want as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it's interesting because I think you've brought so many pieces from your education of 15 years in running a bike shop, right? In the retail industry, you've brought so many pieces of education from understanding how marketing and all of these things, and going to business and understanding how you speak to people in that space, along with a passion that you had. What do you think, if you could look and say, hey, here's one of the biggest lessons I learned in retail that I've brought forth as I've now taken on different position? What do you think, if you could put a pin in one of them, what do you think it would be?
That you get more done through partnerships than you get solo. And I say that because even as a retailer, as we were working to, at the time, I was working a lot on hard surface transportation advocacy as well. And just realizing that, as a retailer, if we tried to go it alone, there's only so far we'd get. And if we could step back and look at who else benefits from this, who else would see the value in it, and how can we bring a broader community to the table to push this forward, we'll achieve, an order of magnitude higher. And I think that's, whether it's leveraging your business as a retailer for good in your community, and being a convener and bringing community stakeholders together, or within an advocacy organization looking at, and IMBA's done this long before I got here, is partnerships has always been key. And how we move forward with that. That would be, I would say, probably the one primary thing that just transcends when you look into it, is really finding those strategic partnerships.
And I feel like that's a great transition to talk about kind of where you are now, post running the 15th biggest trek retail organization on the planet. That's kind of a big deal. That's kind of successful, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing it.
So going to, again, you had your kind of volunteer time with IMBA, retail world, building this whole organization, and now moving into more of a leadership role within IMBA. When you first came across IMBA, it was, in all honesty, redefining what advocacy in the United States for bikes, or more specifically mountain bikes and natural surface trails, meant. It was completely writing the book and redefining the scope of what this sport was to people, and not from the performance side of things, but hey, you can have this and you don't need to wear this crazy kit. And because as mountain biking was ramping up in the 90s in its first kind of heyday, I think IMBA was perfectly positioned to be that, okay, you don't have to do that kind of stuff, but for all of the kids like myself, that a mountain bike was the bike that you got, and the idea of, even 10 years earlier, a road bike was what you got because that's all that existed, and kind of taking advantage of that, but then also helping people across the country figure out how to do this. Very, very different world today than then. You have YouTube. You can go. There's plenty of companies that are actually machine building or helping design to build all of these different things to help build trail in areas. They are partnering with you to help do those presentations to get that funding from local organizations or local government municipalities to kind of bridge those gaps. Machine building becoming more prevalent. It's becoming quicker than hand building. It has its own kind of challenges. It has its own advantage, pros and cons, all of that sort of stuff. And a lot of technology is replacing the things that only existed in an analog world when you first discovered IMBA. So I'm curious if, and this is probably a longer answer, and I want you to give a longer answer, but from your experiences from where IMBA was then to when you came back, and we're all still kind of talking post,
it's not like you ever really left.
Right.
You moved to leadership.
Correct. So when you came into IMBA from, okay, I can actually make things happen now. How did that organization change? And from where you sit now, what were the things that they were doing well, and what were the things that needed to change?
That's
why I said, like, this is a longer question. This is kind of the one that I think this is the meat of what we want to talk about.
The meat of it. Yeah. All right. Well, I think where I'd start with is that while a lot has changed in just even in terms of the types of trails that are being built, the types of bikes that are being built to ride them, how they're being built, all of that has changed tremendously, as you mentioned. What hasn't changed, and what I saw the potential for IMBA when I joined the leadership team, is that IMBA's role to really make the work on the ground more impactful and basically help groups get around barriers and connect them to resources and move those things forward. Not a lot different than it was when I was a college kid needing help to get permission to go build a rake and ride trail in a park. There's a lot of different barriers to get around now, or I shouldn't say different, but more complex and complicated when you're getting into machine building, and the types of funding it takes for those types of trails is a lot different than just pure sweat equity. But IMBA's role, in my mind and in our team's mind, was that it's our job to really resource all the groups on the ground and all the stakeholders. And so it goes beyond even the IMBA local groups on the ground in the chapters, but also out to the community stakeholders that are trying to do this in their communities. Because sometimes we get contacted, by organizations within a community, like you said, that want to see this happen, and they don't even know they have a local mountain bike organization.
Right. Yeah.
Or they may not have a local mountain bike organization. And so we really see our role as like, how do we help and resource folks from the beginning of which everything, and this is how IMBA got started, everything begins with access, right? And if you don't have access to public land, it's a non-starter. And then all the way through to where you have the infrastructure on the ground, and it needs to be, there needs to be a stewardship group and component of that to maintain it long term. And our role hasn't changed in trying to help convene, share best practices, hear what others are doing around the country. If it'll work somewhere else, pollinate it and spread it over there. It's not that, ultimately we see ourselves as the experts, and oftentimes we're getting the expertise from local groups that have solved a particular issue, and we're sharing that same expertise with groups who need it. And as we continue in that role, that part really hasn't changed. The mechanics of how we do it, we publish the old books on trail building, but publishing books anymore versus going into online content, and how we're going to spread, more modern stuff into the education realm is different. But again, it's convening the education and listening to communities and local groups on what they need. Like, where are your biggest pain points and what do you need help with?
Well, I think this is interesting because if we look back a few years ago, things started changing for IMBA pretty significantly. There were changes into how groups were going to be taken care of, different services that were going to be provided. And there has been, and I mean, this is not the easiest topic for us to talk about, but there has been for a lot of groups divestment from IMBA because there wasn't necessarily a perceived value in that space. A lot of groups have been around for 20 years now, and they've kind of figured out how to navigate their local landscape and do the things that they do really well to provide good trail experiences in that space. How do you see IMBA being relevant for those sort of groups? And full disclosure, Cora is still an IMBA chapter. I'm just saying. I understand, and I've heard from other people in the space, like, hey, this is why we're leaving, because we have the lexicon of information to be able to do this. How do you see IMBA interfacing with them now in this space?
That's a great question. It's one of the first questions we tackled as a team when I joined IMBA, because, I think as a national organization, you ultimately, as you work with groups on the ground and like you said, as those groups grow in capacity and effectiveness, there's less and less of a dependency on a national org to help them, right? It's just a natural progression.
My dad always said you should educate your employees so that they can take over your job so you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Right?
And so
isn't that the goal? So you can sit back, right?
Yeah. And we said, like, is that the goal, is to put ourselves out of business because we have, 50 states of high functioning mountain bike advocacy organizations and we're not needed? Or is there a role for a national organization long-term? Does that role get narrower and narrower over time? Yes. And so when you looked at the model, which when we had groups divesting and that period of time that IMBA went through a rough patch, it was because the value wasn't there for the resource share that was being asked, or at least the value wasn't understood. I'll say that. And so we weren't very good at that time of thinking through, what that needs to look like. So the model that we were operating on ultimately wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't sustainable for us. And so that was kind of the reckoning period for IMBA, and the organization. I don't know how much folks know, but it was over 70 employees, and it shrunk down to a small fraction of that during that kind of rough patch. And that's when I joined the team to kind of think through, how should we rebuild IMBA? What should it look like? And how can it be valuable into the future? And so, we went back to, the core of what we did, and really looking at, as a national organization, as you get so many effective groups, there's different ways they should be able to engage with us, and we should meet them where they're at, not ask them for more than what they need, and make sure that we're adding value every step of the way where they need us. And so that's what we've been working really hard over the last couple of years, is to identify where those gaps are and what we can help groups with, figure out where folks need, we know how to get groups started and grow them up to a certain point. But like you said, when they get super high functioning, what value do we bring? And we believe we have the answers to that now in how we do that with groups. And one of those, as we've alluded to, is looking at funding. A lot of people don't realize what got funded last year with the Great American Outdoors Act, and the amount of funding annually that's on the table for trail organizations to be competitive for, of public funding that, you're talking, 900 plus million a year. That's a lot more than what you're going to get from your local bike shop to write a check, right?
Yeah, that'll build a bunch of Bentonvilles. That'll build a lot of Bentonvilles.
It'll build a lot. And not to overstate that opportunity, but to say, like, as we work together, we feel at a national organization we'll continue to do what we always do, which is to really work to protect that funding, that public funding, and coalesce the national voice, which is really, if you don't have someone doing that, and you don't have someone in DC, and you're not working on that, that can be opportunity lost for sure. And then working really hard to connect that funding so it actually ends up, as trails on the ground in your local community is one of the examples. But I guess, there's a lot more into that answer of how we're building out that value and really working with groups, whether they're to help support them, whether they're affiliated with us or not. We have this belief that if we do enough good work through partnership, then folks will join the family. But that has to be because they want to be here and they see the value, not because it's been prescribed some other way.
So of these items that you've had to unpack and figure out how to address in terms of your actual value proposition, what what was your kind of white whale? What was the biggest thing that you guys have felt like you've had to address, whether you've actually solved it already or if it's kind of still in progress? What's been, as you've really dug into it, the most difficult thing to figure out and crack?
And I'm going to say, because there's a lot of different issues that come to mind, but I think for the purpose of what we've been talking about, I'll keep it between that national and local partnership. What the big, hardest thing is to solve and crack there. We used to have two things that left a big void. We had our trail care crews that would go around and work with local communities and have conversations with stakeholders while they were there, and so those traveling crews did a lot of education out in the field, and that went away. And then we had a network of regional directors that were tasked with doing that in their region to try to again do a lot of this work on the ground. And with both of those things gone, the question was like, how do we go back and fill that void that communities have now, because they don't have boots on the ground in their community having these conversations with stakeholders, and with their local groups and doing trail building education and things like that. And that's been the hardest to solve, because while technology is great, my guess is you all aren't going to attend a Zoom meeting for trail building anytime soon, although you might in 2020, because it would have been a good diversion. But I think it's trying to figure out how we can rebuild IMBA in a sustainable way that we can support financially long term, that can still bring back and meet communities where they're at and bring them the resources, connect them to them, give them the educational tools. And a lot of that's going to be done through technology now, which in the past, it was get in the car and drive.
Right.
And so we're reimagining that, but that was the one that we really had to think through, because it involves, technology and thinking through a different strategy of how to be a relevant partner at the micro level.
Yeah, you can't just throw bodies at it in the same way that you could before, because you just be like, all right, you're in charge of these people, you meet with them all year long. You're in charge of you just can't do that the same way in this new space.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great things that the RDs did, but one of the challenges were if you didn't live close to where that RD lived, like you could see where they all lived, because the pockets of great things happening for mountain biking, you could draw a radius and it was there, right?
Hi, Andy Williamson. Hi.
Yeah,
Hi,
Andy's a great example, right? And so you look at Hansi up in Duluth, and it could go down the list, but it was in and around where they were, and they were doing the work that we know was the value that a national organization can provide. But then when that got extracted, it was like, whoa, that left a pretty big void, and we needed to work to solve that.
So, and again, this is where I think my naivete to a lot of this comes in. I think I was riding a mountain bike for probably a solid 5 years before I even knew, one, that Cora existed, and then probably another year or two after that before I was almost guilted by other people in the area to become a member, to donate, all of that stuff. So clearly I was having trouble either having the unaided awareness and having the discovery moment of figuring out what this organization was, but also not seeing the direct value proposition of it. So from the way that you're kind of describing the strengths of IMBA, get in the car and drive, right? Who's in charge for 1990, 2000 to 2020, 2030 of building the car? Because it's great if you have a group of dedicated folks that are inspired, that can kind of see a vision, and then you guys can come in and you can kind of put some of those, you can do the switchboard and you can plug it into specific people and make a lot of that stuff happen, and explain to people some of the don't step on that block, step on this block, like don't touch the whammy type things of just learnings that can help them, glide through that process a little bit quicker. But for the people that don't know that IMBA exists, that don't understand where trails come, if they think that everything is managed by your city or your county municipalities, Some of them are, but
True, yeah.
for those natural surface trails to occur, they're like every person that we've talked to that has been a part of founding Cincinnati trails. There was this genesis moment. There was a lot of outlaw moments that followed it, and then this very nebulous world until something got codified. But then even when it was codified, it was still nebulous at best, and hard to see the value proposition to somebody outside of that world. So what, and maybe trying as much as you can take your CEO of IMBA hat off, but from, and this is probably for you too, Doug, as well, for building that and building the car, how do you build the car to get to a point where IMBA can hop in the passenger seat and somebody can drive it?
It's a good question. We've looked at it and mapped it out. So we mapped out how a trail community comes to life. And there's not only one way, but there's some core things that have to happen in that life cycle or that process. And so, and why I say is there's a lot more than one way that this happens, because it depends on whether you're working with federal land, state land. I mean, there's all kinds of complexities. A lot of folks, unless you really get into the weeds, it's like you wouldn't know. I certainly didn't
for
until
sure.
I got into it.
Unless you actually do it, you're like, look, it's taken 3 months for city council to just approve the budget that we've already approved to donate these funds to get these trails built.
Or 3 months to find the email to the person that you're supposed to contact to ask who the right person to get funding is. Like,
there's a million ways that has to happen. You're absolutely right, Ken.
Yeah. And so what we did is we mapped it out and looked at and basically did a high level gap analysis of, all right, at all these steps, where do people most often get stuck at? And what's the biggest barriers? And let's make sure that we have all of our resources and ability to help them out well-rounded in those places. And then we'll work backwards to all the other resources that need to be built. And looked at it as really a systems approach and looking across that ecosystem that starts with access, right? And getting permission. And then it goes into, making sure that, depending on vision setting or what needs to happen, we're providing opportunities for folks to plug into us, get what they need, go back to their community, continue to move things along. And if they need us, we can come into their community and help. Not as easy in 2020, but actually we did it a lot more virtually in 2020 as well. But the ability to help step folks through that ecosystem and that process, while there's at each step of the way, there's a lot of different things you have to consider based on the variables at that step, but the steps, every community's gone through them. And so that's, to your question about the cars, we're like, okay, so if we're going to get communities from start to finish, or maybe they're already in the middle, or maybe they're at the end and they just want to go back through it because they want to add more diversity into their system, or they want to add more inventory, it still likely has to go back to somewhere within that life cycle. And there's going to be different help needed as they move forward. And for us, we're just right now, we have a job posting for a community engagement coordinator that's really looking with all these communities, identifying where they're at, if they're stuck somewhere in that process, helping connect them to the resources that we have, and putting, our best folks on that. And then as they move forward, they can plug and play when they need us, right? And that way, and we still have a lot to develop, I guess, in those resources and educational tools. So not pretending that we're there yet. But our goal by 2025 is to really ignite 250 communities in the U.S. To have built more quality and quantity of trail systems close to where people live. And that's taking that same approach of, we can't be in a car driving across the country. We won't have this broad staff of directors all around the country, but we can still help communities get to where they need to go more effectively and efficiently.
So do you think the ability to get people more effectively where they need to be? I'm Bob in Montana. I don't know that I've got an IMBA group. I want to build trail. You can do that because that's what IMBA did in the 90s and the early 2000s. But now IMBA also is like, okay, you are all spun up and excited about trail in Portland, Maine. You know you want to do this. You know you're plugged in. You just can't figure out how to do finance. Do you feel that y'all have started to figure out the math on how to take all the historical pieces and codify them so that you can give people the correct building blocks? Because I feel like for such a long time, it was like, here's the actual building blocks. You have to do it in this order. Do you feel like there's more fluidity now? Is that what you're chasing?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's more fluidity, and I think not everything always happens in that linear fashion of those building blocks, but to know where you're at and what, ultimately what the barrier is, codifying that information and making sure that folks know and have those resources is super important. And as we did it, we looked, it was like, we don't have a lot of information in some of these areas because we were so focused in the beginning on getting access and trail building education. And outside of that, we hadn't really thought through, the rest of those steps. And I mean, we had to some degree in certain places and areas, but it wasn't uniformly put together and identified. And it is fluid because not everybody's, has a problem with access. Not everybody's working with federal land. Not everybody needs public funding. They may have great private foundations that want to, so there's all these variables, but there's still a lot of commonality no matter where you are in the country.
So I like that you guys are talking about this in terms of building blocks, and we've talked about a linear process, a fluid process. I'm now envisioning this, the creative guy in the room, I'm now envisioning this as kind of a buffet of you don't need all of the foods, but you need to, like, what you want. If I want mashed potatoes, I want mashed potatoes to be there. So
we go to a Chinese buffet so we can be like, cool, I want some crab rangoon.
Whew.
And then I want like some garlic chicken.
That's a sad pandemic reference there. That just there's a great Chinese buffet like a mile from down.
Yeah, a mile between her. Yeah.
I guess this kind of leads me to it's kind of esoteric, but it's also pragmatic in terms of IMBA slimming down its overall organization means that you can't have analog folks across the country providing a buffet to all of these places, which it sounds like you want to have all of the solutions, but only give people the solutions that they need in a given moment, not force, which I think from people that I've talked to in my own personal experiences, I think that's where a lot of the pushback was, is that, you have to do it this way or you're not doing it correctly. So from your perspective, and fully admitting that you have outages in a lot of these areas, what becomes the sustainable model for building a full buffet for local, federal, state lands, for starting an organization from the ground up, helping an organization that needs help with finances, helping an organization that needs help with grant writing? Like, how do you sustain all of these really complicated pieces? Because they can't be, those items are complicated and nuanced enough that they can't be training modules on some sort of learning platform and live in perpetuity, because they're changing constantly. So to have that Chinese buffet, God damn, now I'm like drooling.
It is dinner time, guys.
To have that,
we're well past dinner time in Ohio.
All right.
But to have that ongoing offering that you can select ad hoc as you need, how do you staff up for that? And then technology is obviously going to play a big role, but like,
go to business.
what is kind of swirling in your head in terms of how you take that to business?
Yeah, that's a great question. To lead off with, I think there's a certain amount of evergreen content that can live online and can be in a module that folks, can watch and understand at a webinar, just to help create that baseline understanding of some of these more complex topics. But then when it comes to your point into applying that into their local landscape and understanding all the variables, that's where having our team set up the way that we've got it organized now, where we have identified the subject matter expertise across that spectrum, is then making that handoff, like, okay, you've gone through the webinars, you understand the landscape, or you come to us with it, already have that understanding, you're stuck in an area, is connect you to the right, folks in the organization that can really, come in and partner with you and problem solve with you based on all the experience that we have across the organizations. And in a lot of ways, with our strategic partnerships, right? And bring folks into that discussion that need to be there to help solve for it. We have some really fun projects like that going on right now. And between the subject matter expertise that exists within the organization and the partnerships that we have with others that have expertise where we don't, it's just making those connections and putting the right people around the table to solve the problem, instead of just focusing on the problem and getting paralyzed. It's just bringing those right folks that, around the table. And so to bring it into the model that's sustainable, it's not growing IMBA back to a large, employee population. It's really having a tight-knit group of subject matter experts in all these areas that also are connected to additional resources in those regions, and understand, who are the folks in those regions and areas that have expertise as well, that can add to ours depending on what the challenge or the problem is. And that way we're more of a connector and a convener, as well as helping folks navigate that. So when we think about trail champions, where do they need help? If we don't have it internally or it's outside of our wheelhouse, we should know exactly who has that expertise and who to connect them to. And if it's regional specific, understand those regional nuances and connections to the groups in those regions that can help them as well. And so to me, that's how you keep IMBA nimble, and lean at a national level, but still provide tremendous value down to the local level.
It's being able to respond to the challenge as opposed to dictate the way things have to be. I think that's interesting way to think about it as you are reinventing this, because this has been a process. And I think this is something we've all watched if you're in the trail community at all, because like IMBA has kind of always been our lighthouse, right? We've always kind of like been like, oh, it's IMBA. This is our national organization. And it's interesting seeing this change and seeing the organization start to morph to get to a place where 30 years ago, what was trail science? No one knew. It wasn't a thing, right? Like 30 years ago, I was riding a 10-speed around a forest full of old unexploded ordnance in Connecticut, right? Like that was mountain biking. It wasn't codified. And we're here 30 years on, and we're now just starting to understand as organizations and businesses how we can take all these other expertises and make it into something that works to continue to advance stuff. So all of these things are happening for you. What do you feel like is the most rewarding piece of doing this sort of work? Why do you love this thing?
Well, so the short answer is I love mountain biking, and any ability to bring access to more people, and bring that experience that I love, to more people, to have the opportunity to have that experience is incredibly rewarding. And we have such a great team at IMBA that's really thinking through this, and the folks that I work with are phenomenal. Fantastic. And you can imagine, jumping into a nonprofit from retail. I don't have the knowledge, but they do. And so just learning so much about what it really takes, and then really working to resource them, to be able to do it and be more effective with it is exciting. I had a high school guidance counselor tell me, find a way to do what you love to do and get paid to do it. You never work a day in your life. And in large ways, this is manifested for me, because it's really, really exciting when that someone who didn't have the ability to throw a leg over a bike and roll onto a trail now has that opportunity and finds that same outlet, that same joy and experience from it that we all share. Yeah, it's awesome. That's as rewarding as anything I think you can do.
Do you feel like that's ever gotten lesser for you when you get to see that light bulb go off for people?
No, and in fact, even in retail, at that time, it was so great to see the excitement when people got the new bike. And then, you're like, gee, I wonder what they thought about it when they actually got it out and rode it. So no, it's just changed in sharing that excitement. And it doesn't, it's just one thing that's never waned over time as long as I've been in the industry is excited when new people are getting into the sport, exciting to share it with them, to invite them into the mountain bike community, especially. and see them really turn a passion switch gets turned on for them. That never gets old for me. If it does, I should probably quit my job and go do something else.
Yeah, yeah. So I've kind of seen this through my friend Doug in terms of being in a position to try and elicit change in our region. But I'm curious from your perspective, knowing the levers that you have and the buttons that you have to push and the contacts that you have within the national organization, on top of all of the regional and statewide organizations that exist across the country, do you feel like you have, like, for me, I would be so excited about all of the possibilities and all of the potential that exists for doing exactly what you're saying, not necessarily making IMBA amazing and like everybody needs an IMBA shirt, and like having crazy brand awareness for the brand, but putting more butts on bikes and having more people find mountain biking and have natural surface trail access. Do you feel like there are so many options for you that it's almost paralyzing in terms of like where to start?
Specifically, John purpose question is this, like, John's like, if I had your job, Kent, my brain would be exploding.
Well, there's so much potential. There's so much now with the new laws that have been passed. There's so much money. There's so much visibility for the specific sport. There's so much visibility coming to trail running and all of the other natural surface sharers of those specific trails. And I think people are hopefully starting to get to a point where they realize that they can actually do more together than they can separately. And then you have a couple organizations that are actually kind of fomenting that of like, hey, let's do this together. But from where you are, being able to kind of be the one to wield this whole organism, like, I mean, it seems like it would be an overwhelming idea of like, man, there's so many things that I can do. I have to take advantage of every second. Maybe I'm making it into something bigger than it is.
No, you're not at all. That's I think even within any nonprofit that's really mission focused, it's like everything leads to mission. And so it's really hard to say not now or no to things based on the amount of resources you have. And it's a constant challenge and struggle. And, thankfully it doesn't all land on my shoulders to figure out, how to prioritize and where to really focus our resources. I've got a great board that we think that through with. And then we built a fantastic leadership team at IMBA. And weekly we look at, okay, with our resources and what we have, is this the best place to invest our time and our resources right now to impact what we're trying to impact? And we have to ask ourselves that all the time. And then across that, you can imagine through that whole system is, how do we also align our work so that we, as we're all deciding within our different teams and departments what we're working on, we're all rowing in the same direction. We're all heading to where we want to end up, in where we think IMBA can be built into over the next 5 years. So it's constantly on my mind. Initially, I would say it was a bit paralyzing until I better understood the organization and saw more clearly where I think we can be. And now it's just it's a process to get there. It's not done overnight, and realizing that I wish I didn't have to tell somebody we don't have every single resource that is needed across the landscape, but it's also understanding which resources move the needle the fastest and the most and starting there. And we will get there. But it takes time, and trying to spin it up all at once would be a fate worse than death. So we've got to take it in small bites.
As I have learned from running a chapter, do not chase every rabbit down every hole.
Yeah.
That is just unwise. Just be like, that's a big, super thick rabbit. We're going to eat that one for dinner.
Well,
3 years.
I mean, it's how do you eat the elephant one bite at a
Right.
time? But more appropriately, people eat a lot more sweet and sour shrimp than they do. I'm trying to think of what asparagus. Other things that are at the
Chinese buffet.
I know, but that's normally what my starting plate is for the Chinese buffet.
Okay.
Again, like wrapping it all back to what food we're gonna eat. I mean, we are people that like riding bikes. Like, this is why we ride bikes, so we can just eat all the food. Yeah.
Well, this has been absolutely awesome. Kent, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know you've listened to a few episodes of ours, and you know that we're going to ask you one question, kind of the end of this piece, and that's this: you're the CEO of IMBA. What do you want the Pebbles, our listeners, the Pebbles here in this gravel lot of what do you want them to take home from this conversation that we've had about your life through this and where you're at right now in IMBA?
I think probably the best thing is to come back, and if you haven't ever taken a look at IMBA, or you had in the past and walked away, is come back and take a second look, and know that we ultimately are here to really partner with you. And I think that may be a different experience than what folks have had at certain times in the past. But that's take a closer look, and even if you have any type of local mountain bike organization, whether they're affiliated with IMBA or not, lean in and see if you can somehow help out and get involved, because great trail communities don't happen in a silo, and they don't happen without trail champions and folks that are willing to put in, whether it's sweat equity on the trails, or help connect resources, or help maybe go talk to a city council person. There's something you can do to help, and IMBA's here to partner with you in that. So don't hesitate. And if you see things we're doing that you think aren't so great, my door's always open, and we can't fix things we don't know about. So let me know.
Careful.
Well, I mean, but
you got to be that way.
I like, if you don't know what's broken, you cannot fix it. I appreciate that from that perspective for sure. Please tell me what I'm doing wrong. I need it, right? That's how we all keep ourselves in check. I love that. I think that's great. And I know personally, I echo that. If you are not involved in your trail community and you ride trail, there are a million things you can do. You do, like, I'm kind of a crappy trail builder. I'm not gonna lie. I love it. I have tools, and you know what? This is the year I get to go out and start building some trail again. But I'm not great at it. I'm better at other things, and that's where I've leveraged my time. So if you've got a gift in some place, whatever it is, and you care about your trails, trust me, your organization will be happy to have your help in whatever way you can, for sure.
Well, I think go ahead.
I was just going to add to that, and you're gonna meet some salt of the earth people in the process, and create some amazing friendships. So it's not all about what you can do for the trail community, but you'll walk away with that unintended benefit of meeting some of the coolest people around in your community as well.
100%. That's what we all like. That's where this show kind of originated, and that's what it always comes back to, is like a bike by itself is not necessarily. I mean, like, they hang and they look neat, but they don't really do anything until you get other people. And riding a bike by yourself is fun, but it's a lot more fun when you're around other people. But to echo your point, I think this is a great opportunity to talk about, if you have a problem, it's time to put it in the comments, because then Kent can answer your question while we've still got him on the live stream. So for anyone still listening, go ahead and fill out your comments if you haven't already. I've already got some that have been pulled from the rest of the show as we've been talking. So we have some things to start with. But this is your last plug for putting in your AMA comments.
So as always, a huge, massive thanks to all of you Pebbles, old, new. We cannot do this without your support, obviously. Go hit us up on Patreon. Be sure to subscribe. Click the like button. Follow us on Twitch. All of the things on the appropriate locations that you're supposed to be doing the things. Do those things. We need your support to continue to bring this to you every single week.
And in addition to your support to keep these proverbial lights on, which, as you guys will notice, I changed it today because it's way colder. So I've got like the cool lights going on. Yeah, it's ice blue. To keep these lights going on, we depend on not only your support, but the support of these great sponsors that we are going to tell you about. And their links are in the show notes for this, that you can go click on and save some money and find yourself some cool stuff for people that support this thing that we are making.
New stuff coming from our good friends at Be Free Ride Bikes Apparel. If you do not follow them on Instagram, go follow BFRB Cycling and at Be Free Ride Bikes. Go follow them now. New kit drops are starting to happen. New spring stuff coming out. We love all of their gear. It's our third year, fourth, maybe almost third year with Adam, and we love his gear. Anybody who's ever ridden it can tell you it is some of the nicest stuff around. If you need custom kit, go to bfrbcycling.com and take a look at how they can help you and your whole team and all your friends be outfitted in the nicest stuff around.
We are also being powered today by the folks that Doug already mentioned in the intro today, Grimpour Brothers Coffee. You can follow the link in our show notes. Head to Grimpour Brothers now. Select any of their blends. All of their blends are designed. They're all
so good.
Yes, I know. They like
So
seeps through the bag, but then when you open the bag, it's a completely different world. Each one of them are small batch roasted by hand by Dan, sent out every week. Maybe not this week because he has no power, but they're all done with love. And in addition to that, every single one of his blends has a different purpose. So it could be an athlete, it could be an event, it could be a cause related to cycling, but all of them develop proceeds that go to supporting something to keep the community running and to keep the community kind of going and moving forward and giving back. So thank you, Dan, for doing that. And if you go to them right now and sign up for the subscription service, you'll get a bag of coffee free. So I think that's 13 bags for the cost of 12. So that's a pretty good deal. And then you can have, I mean, I don't know what you're going to do for the other 11 months of the year. But you'll be well caffeinated for a year or for a month, and then you'll probably have a heart attack, but that's okay. It'll be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% worth it. Also, massive thanks to Mitch at BioWheels Fit Studio and Workshop in Cincinnati, offering you a full host of bike fitting services intended to provide you with the best cycling fit you have ever had, the most efficient, comfortable, sustainable. Mitch is awesome. He's fit me. He's fit John. We are very happy with our fits. We constantly try to figure out how to make them better, but we do that by going to see Mitch. So make sure to go see Mitch at BioWheels Fit Studio.
And by the Ritual All Natural Skincare, providing you handmade small batch all natural chamois cream, custom made for your bike shop or your cycling team. So if you guys have a cycling team or if you own a bike shop and you want something that is custom branded that only your team or only your shop has, reach out to us. Send a comment, send a direct message, whatever it is. We will put you in contact with the Ritual, and we will help you get that figured out. It is, guys, this is the product that I kind of started on my own and then have eventually handed it off to Mitch and Kate. And they are kind of taking it with love and making amazing product that's actually good for your body and is actually, it makes your ride experience better. And now they're doing it custom, so you can have your own graphics, your own custom branding, all of that stuff. So hit us up, ask us how we can put you in contact with getting your own custom Ritual All Natural Chamois Cream.
Absolutely. And a massive thanks to our awesome friends, Troy and the entire crew over at Hand Up Gloves. They've been a sponsor of ours since the very beginning. We are so thankful for them. They've got gloves for bikes, snow sports, which we have a lot of right now, and golf, which someday we may have again. Who knows? Right now, you can only play with orange balls that you'll never find. So make sure you head on over to their website and get gloves and apparel. I'm wearing jorts right now. I know it's cold, but I always wear my jorts when we recorded. They're like my lucky jorts. So the great part about Hand Up, it's all about your personality. All of their stuff is made so that you can let the person you are shine on the outside when you're out on the trail. So click the link in the show notes and then head on over to their site and enter Pebble $sign at checkout to save 10% off everything in store.
So you guys know by now, we love hearing from you. So make sure to go visit the website, subscribe, follow us on all of the forms of social media. As Doug said, we're on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I think that's all of them.
I don't know.
Regardless, we're kind of everywhere.
Clubhouse,
so if you can't find us, Libsyn, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, there's like 200 and something other RSS feeds you can find us at. Whatever. We're easy to find. Or you could just go to thegravelot.com, stay up to date there. All of our content is there. You can see our new live stream every Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our podcast drops Thursday mornings. You can find Girls Moving Mountains, which their new episode dropped this week. Tomorrow morning, if you're watching the live stream, yesterday, if you're listening to the podcast.
Reverse
but
time.
Go subscribe to their podcast. This has been something that Doug and I have been invested in since probably June of last year, in helping Nikki and Jen bring this thing to the world, and really giving them the voice that they deserve, to really build community around putting kids and more women and just more athletes on bikes, and telling the story of the GRIT program and just all of the amazing things that they're doing. So go subscribe to that podcast, get engaged with it. You guys should be listening to it. And tell us what you think, whether it's the content form, send us a DM, whatever it is, or call the phone number. What is it? 513-400-5577. Give us a call.
Really
send us a text message.
I've already memorized it. It's great. It's very simple.
I tried to pick an easy number so we could actually be like, since we're dumb, we could actually remember it.
I'll try. I'll do my best. Our intro and outro music is from Wadaboy, so many thanks to him for all of the awesome tunage. Check him out on all the major platforms, or click the link in the show notes to get to his music. So, AMA questions coming right at you, Kent. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, I'll try and start.
You want to kick off the first one?
Yeah, I'll try and organize these so they kind of build up. So we're not gonna hit you with the hard stuff right away. So I guess the first one is, what is your favorite type of bike? We talked about, obviously your hybrid bike is probably the one that's closest to your heart. But since you discovered trail riding, there's 37 different types of mountain bikes right now. So I'm not gonna make you pick a specific brand and model, but what general type of bike is your favorite?
General type, I would say, would be in the 4 to 5 inch travel range, and something that's still pretty light. So I have that old cross country route. So getting into something with a lot more travel or heavier isn't normally, and especially with where I live, isn't suitable to the terrain, but right within that range, it's still pretty light and nimble.
I'm such an American kid right now. What is that, 100 to 120? Yeah. Nailed it. Yes.
Yeah. There's plenty of stories. John, American kid, me, European. I was trying to do the math and being like, what? I don't know how many that is in millimeters. I can't.
I was trying to go backwards, 2.62 or whatever. Okay, so follow up to that one as we're like ramping this up. This one I am going to make you pick a specific.
Ooh, this is a good one.
All the trails that you have ridden in your life, can you give us your single favorite trail?
Ooh.
That is tough.
So brutal, because you've got to have ridden so much stuff.
Yeah.
I got to believe it's probably like telling one of your kids that you like them more than the other one, right?
Yeah, and I do that regularly. This is actually more difficult. Let's see.
You're the good kid. You're the bad kid.
It's hard because some of them, I'm a sucker for the scenery on the trail a lot of times. And so, whether you're right up on Gooseberry Mesa or you hit these trails that you end up with this just amazing view, sometimes are as fun as trails that, when you talk about trail building and how the trail flows and the experience of actually riding the trail, it's different. But I would say, that's a good question. It's probably in southern Utah, and in and around. One that I just did this summer, which was really amazing, was I think it was called the Thunderhead. I'd have to go back and look again. Thunderhead Trail that comes out of Bryce Canyon area, and it's a really fantastic trail when you see all the hoodoos and everything that's around there. And it's a great, just fun scenic trail system to go ride, but it gets in certain sections, pretty sketchy with, fall exposure and everything that goes along with that. But it's hard because I've ridden, not just a ton domestically, but also internationally. So that gets hard.
John,
I'll say that for now.
John, what about you? What's your favorite trail you've ridden?
I have, I haven't even ridden all of the Cora trails, so I'm
Right. Okay, fine. So
probably
what's your favorite
not.
trail you've ridden? Doesn't matter.
Sleepy Hollow.
That's a good. I
I
mean, it's
like.
class.
I just want to go fast.
Yeah.
And that trail I actually feel like I can go fast on. Most of the other ones that are the other cool kids go fast on, I can't go that fast on.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with I can't remember the name of the other one. It's a toss up between Bomb Dog or the other trail that comes back down to the parking lot at Coldwater. Both were the most at Coldwater in Anniston, Alabama. Both were the
Yep.
most scary moments of my entire life. Bomb Dog's got a ton of exposure and it's all rocks, and we were going way too fast and I was way underbiked and I had no clue what I was doing and I just hit the whole thing. I was on. And then on the back downside, it's all these massive whoops. You can see there's a video of Cody, I can't remember his last name right now, riding that trail in Addiston, and it's massive airs. I could only roll them, but every time I would roll them, my feet would come off the pedals. And I was just getting super scared. It was really, really fun. So those definitely my favorites. So got to go hit those again. All right. So if you this is a tough one. I don't know if you've got a number for this, but if you can look at the number of projects that IMBA has been brought on board to try to like make happen, what do you think the overall completed percentage of those is? Like,
Oh wow, like over the whole 30-year history of the organization, or you?
wow, if you know that, that's
Man,
impressive.
that'd be mind-boggling. It's interesting as we look at the funnel of projects and where they come in. I know that a lot of the projects, and we'll have several hundred a year that we plan and design through our earned income side on the trail solutions side. A lot of those most of what we're currently finding is they get stuck at funding, right? And so as far as how many end up on the ground that whether we build them or not, or local groups do, or other professional contractors do, the number of projects a year, I would guess probably in the 20 to 30 range, but that's, we look at the metrics a little differently around that. But number of projects I would guess are probably in that range. But it also, without overthinking it, there's sometimes just basic, 1 to 2 mile loops that get built by volunteers that, we may have been a partner with them to get them permission, and that's the only role we played. And there's a lot of those, I'm sure, out on the landscape that we don't necessarily track.
Right. Okay. Now we're getting into the meaty ones. This one's a little bit longer, so let me read through it. And then I'll let you address it. So this will lead into my next question, because it's going to essentially like directly respond to this specific style of question. So here's the question: how does IMBA get back to working for their members instead of the members working for them? It seems like the dynamic has shifted to membership drives and dollars raised instead of the grassroots style of helping projects from the ground up.
It's an interesting perspective. I'm glad they asked it that way, because what they're asking for is exactly where IMBA has to get back to. I think over the last 2 years, while we've been in the process of rebuilding and setting the strategy for the organization, we really worked hard to direct folks to connect to their local orgs. And one of the ways we do that's through the membership drives and really trying to push all membership local down to the local level. And then to the second part of the question, and how we really help the grassroots, with those projects, I think that speaks back to what I'm talking about is we're looking at how can we partner at every step of the way where those organizations need help. And that's really the lens that we're laser focused on both creating and then both codifying and standardizing our resources in those areas, because that's it. I mean, that's the premises that we came, that as a leadership team, we landed on, is we have to meet these groups where they're at. We all know all the work gets done local and on the ground in communities. And our role as a national organization is to resource that as much as we humanly can, and help those folks get around those barriers. And so we're getting back there. We're not 100% there yet, as I said. But that's the direction we're striving and driving fast and furious towards, because it's there's so much demand out on the landscape.
Yeah.
And being able to help with that. And in some ways, just to touch on the membership drives, those voices around the table and the amount of the folks in your organization that you represent ultimately carry a lot of weight when you get to working with stakeholders in the community. And so the more mountain bikers that are members or supporters of your local organization, it's just a larger group that you represent, and it's more voices that it's just more powerful. So there's an important aspect to that, but it's not the end game
Right.
or the only thing that we're focused on.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of just cyclical momentum if you're talking to people in positions of power within the government of, well, me and 10 people versus me and 10,000 people. Suddenly, there's a lot more votes that come with 10,000 than 10. So, but that leads perfectly into the second part of that, which first question was user. Second part is something that I want to add to it. Marketing brain here in terms of trying to recruit people back. How do you personally address the folks who feel traumatized by their experiences with IMBA in the past, and kind of want to just, because modern culture is, you did me wrong once, never again, I'm never doing that again. So from those people who had those bad experiences and are just like, never again am I giving them $1, how would you begin to reopen the conversation with them and recruit them back into the fold?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I'd say don't worry about giving us $1, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I think the most important thing is to, one, we know that we've made mistakes over 30 years, and there's things that we've handled in the past that we didn't handle well, and what we're striving for with our team now is that we've gone back and we've looked at that and said, what can we learn from that? Let's make sure we don't repeat it. And make sure that those lessons are carried forward into our work. And that's really what's changed our mindset and how we partner. And so again, and it's not to say that the work that's been done over the last 30 years, it's not all been bad by any means, but there's been some painful parts of IMBA's past that we have to move forward on. And I would just ask them, to give us a bit of grace and take a second look at where we're headed now and what our focus is and how the values that we have and how we're working within those values and how we partner. And I think they'll find a new experience and a new IMBA that, I hope they find valuable. And if they find valuable, long-term, if they join their local organization and if they throw, some funding to IMBA as well down the road, we only want that to happen if at some point we've created value to them in that process. And if we haven't, I wouldn't give $1 to us either. And so I think that's important for them to understand. And, bottom line, we really took hard the lessons that we learned in the past. And, we believe we won't commit those same mistakes, although we'll probably certainly make mistakes as we go forward. It's within that mindset of it's a partnership, and we all have this shared common goal of creating more trails close to home and better, places to ride. And if you can see that partnership again and work with us, we'd be happy to take steps again to reengage.
I think I appreciate that from someone who's been inside that box, as well as knowing plenty of people who've been outside that box. So appreciate, we all, regardless, and as John said this, the world is, we all make mistakes and we all have to own them, but growing from them and moving forward to do good things and better things is I think what you've certainly said, hey, we're changing and we're growing, we're going to figure out new ways to do this. But it is great to hear people in the positions of leadership acknowledge where we all make mistakes. We all have to do that. I think that's important.
Well, I think it means a lot as somebody who's like, for me personally, somebody that's donated to IMBA, the local chapter, all of that stuff for a couple years now. For you to say as the leader of the entire organization, if you're not seeing the value proposition in this, I don't want your money. Don't give me money so you feel upset that you feel like you're being slighted, because then that cascades into a whole bunch of other like bad feelings and like frustrations down the road, because like I feel like you guys are still going to go to business. Not to say that you don't, you're not going to say I don't care if you give us money or not, because you're still going to go to business the way that you guys are trying to go to business to fix a lot of these things and fix some of the outages. But it is nice for you to be the one that is kind of your head on the line with this, the one saying, look, if we're not providing value to you as a single person or a business or a local bike shop,
that's on us,
Yeah.
And as a national org, when we really were at the low point of deciding if and how to rebuild it, if we can't add value, it's game over. It doesn't matter. And guilting people to give money and not adding value is not a sustainable path forward, and not a path that I want to be involved with.
It's going to speed it up, in all honesty.
Exactly.
Like it's going to escalate that disenfranchisement.
But I will say this, it is important for people to give their feedback in these spaces, because if your local org or your national org isn't hearing your feedback and you saying, hey, this isn't providing me value, neither one of those organizations is going to be able to adapt and change and grow to actually provide the community what it's asking for. So there's a process of feedback, and you have to be engaged in that. You can't just yell and rant and rave. You need to actually engage in a way that is meaningful and helpful. So have conversations with those.
Some people are. They're just going to rant and make dumbass
and
comments.
Look, I do my piece of it. I do.
I did it last week.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair play.
So I think this is the last one we've got for the AMA, but I think it's a good one, because there is a massive change afoot, and it's a good question. IMBA, you've put out the definitive guide on building trails. You have spent the time with U.S. Forest Service to guide them into building their, trail building books. With the more modern style of trail being built, more flow trail, wider, machine built, all that sort of stuff, do you see a need for IMBA to update the trail standards manual and kind of take a revisitation to that?
Have you been listening into our leadership team meetings, or was this question a planted question? No, I say that because it's like one of the biggest topics of discussion.
I think yes. I don't know which is the right answer.
So to be perfectly fair, you're like interview 175 for TGL. We've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of those people are people building trail across the country or people that are involved in advocacy. So to say that we have a pretty solid bench that we can go ask me, like, I want you to think, I want you to think about, I want you to think about this for a solid day and come back to me with, I'm going to give you one question. So we have like a couple of these are from some of those people. And this is one of them that came from one of those people that had a good solid day to think about it. And this is what they came back to us with.
Yeah.
So
they're spot on.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah, they're spot on. And it's, those books are, candidly, they're outdated with modern trail building techniques. And we recognize that it's one of the biggest gaps that we see in our education that we need to build. And we'll be building online versus publishing new books. Although some print form will probably come out, because a lot of times in the field that's helpful. But the trail building has evolved tremendously since we put those books out, and the craft continues to evolve. And we realize that there's a lot of volunteer organizations that are being asked to help maintain these systems that were built by professional contractors that are professional builders. And so it's like, okay, you're asking, when in my day, taking care of the trail was pretty easy. Because we were more or less just managing overgrowth and fixing some stormwater, erosion problems. When you start building flow trail and a lot of these more technical builds and rock armoring just really fantastic trail experiences, that takes a different skill level to maintain those trails. And so even if they were built by professionals, when professionals leave, who helps maintain those? And even land managers are asking for that, because they're like, well, sometimes this is a machine maintenance issue versus a hand built, like we talked about, all this has evolved. So yes, there's a great need for that. And we're working as one of our priorities even this year is to get some new information out on the landscape in an online educational format, and then long-term looking to build that out in a much more robust way for folks. And so you'll see a fair amount coming from us on trail building education for more modern day trails within the next 2 years.
That's sweet. That is
Something to
sweet.
look forward to.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's good to see you all taking that tack and realizing that's an outage in a place we're all moving forward. As I said before, right? Trails 30 years ago are way different than trails now, and we just got to figure that out and continue to move forward in that space. Dude, Kent, this has been amazing. Thank you for taking the time to join us from the coldest place in North America, or maybe not North America, but the current coldest place in
The States.
in United States.
Yeah.
Today. So thanks for being taking the time.
This has been great, and I really appreciate you both telling the stories and allowing us to have a conversation about IMBA. It's been fantastic. So thank you.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's talking about bikes. It's always really, really difficult to do for all of us.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. It's not like we care about any of this.
No.
No, it's just a medium thing. For sure. So, Pebbles, that is all for this week. So be sure to subscribe, follow, engage, because as we say each and every week, decisions and trails are made by those who show up. So if we don't see you on the trails this time, we'll see you next week. Bye, John.
Bye, Doug.